What's going on, guys? This is RichaadEB here, and today I am bringing you my PPL Division 1 Season 5 draft analysis. So if you haven't somehow picked up on all this, we are back in the PPL this season as a different team, Canberra Toucans. You can see the logo there on screen. And the draft stream was yesterday, day before. I get confused with time zones. But in any case, this is going to be my draft analysis for the PPL. Those of you who aren't familiar with how the PPL does their drafting, we have a budget of 110 points or 110 million pounds, because English people, for all the mons on your team, and you have to pick between 8 to 11 mons. Megas are not compulsory, particularly with the fact that there are so few in the new games at the moment. And for Z-moves and stuff, you can also check out a link in the description to a video where other people explain all of it, but basically you get to pick 2 mons that get to use offensive Z-moves only, and 1 mon that gets to use all Z-moves at the end of your draft. So after you've drafted everything, you can pick those. And we went through and priced every single mon individually, so they should be fairly balanced. There are some lower tier things that will get picked up because they're so cheap, and vice versa. You can't have a full team of OU mons like I did a few seasons ago, because we priced things so that's not possible. So without further ado, let's get into my draft. So, we were in a pretty shitty spot, if I'm honest, to draft. We were 7th out of 12 coaches, which is honestly my least favourite spot to be in. I want to be as close to a wheel pick as possible. I pick based on cores, and so being in that spot really sucked, because there were particular things I was looking for synergy and that kind of thing, that it's much harder to guarantee you're going to get like 2 mons that synergize really well. But looking into the first round, there are a couple of things I was looking at. I was interested in something like Necrozma potentially as a bulky psychic type, but I didn't particularly want to have to draft around it because there are other psychic types I was potentially interested in. Similarly with Jirachi, although I think Jirachi and Victini were both on my list as something I could potentially pick up round 1. Victini, I was using it in the PPL off season and absolutely loving it, and I was like, I should use this for actual season. And Jirachi is probably the best one in the format. Before we actually decided on bans and stuff, I really wanted Magina, but then we banned it, which is kind of fair because the only reason I wanted it is because like this skin's just gonna fucking win leagues. So instead I decided to go for another new mon that has been added in Gen 7, and that is Cellar. So Cellar is an interesting mon. It has the really good defensive typing of Steel and Flying, which gives me a couple of good resistance early on. And one of the really important things with drafting, as I mentioned before, is like that synergy, and a lot of people go for like a DragonForce Steel core. Now in my mind, the Steel typing is one of the weakest, I guess, in terms of depth. So like there are a couple of really good Steel types, but after a while, after like round 4 or 5, you're really having to dig into lower tiers to find a Steel type, and often they have a lot of exploitable flaws, stuff like that. So something I wanted to get really early is a good Steel type, has a nice Steel typing to go with it, and its weaknesses are really easy to cover. Like Fire and Electric, you can cover that with like any Dragon type ever. So straight away, you can have a core filled out. If you have like a Dragon type and then a Fairy that's a Wish Passer, you've already got a really bulky core that's hard to break. Cellar is also, similar to one of those base 100 pixies. It's like a budget version of Jirachi almost. Not quite, because it doesn't quite have the versatility, but it is really bulky. It can be an effective sweeper with like Autotomize, can run Scarf, etc. And it's got reasonable power and a reasonably good offensive move pool. And with the ability Beast Boost, that just helped it sweeping potentially even more. So I'm really keen to try this out, and I'm pretty happy with it as a first round pick. Now going into the second round, there are actually a lot of things I was considering. I was looking at picking up a Lati twin because both of those are still around, and I was like, well, they're just fucking amazing. But I was also looking at Mega Charizard X, and what I ended up deciding to go for was actually neither of those two, and what I ended up getting was Arcanine. Now the reason I went for Arcanine was because, again, like Steel types, Fire types are fairly thin on the ground in my opinion. There are a couple of really solid ones. Victini, which I was looking at taking instead of Cellar, but it got taken before me. Arcanine, maybe like Heatran, Mega Charizard X, and then it starts getting kind of rough to find good fire types. Infernape as well, but like a good bulky fire type is really rare, and that's what Arcanine gives you because it gets access to Recovery, Will-O-Wisp, Intimidate, and decently good stats for bulk. It can be run as a fully defensive or especially defensive fire type, and can be offensive, like 115 base attack with, you know, banded flareblitz can do a lot of damage. Also access to extreme speed, which really helps to cover Celestial's fire weakness, not so much the electric weakness. But the main reason I picked Arcanine over something like ZEDION was because hazard removal is a pain in the ass to have to bring every week, and I feel like if you have a Charizard, Stealth Rocks are going to be coming no matter what. Like, even if it's ZEDION, because you have to bring it in once before Mega Evolving, people are going to be bringing Stealth Rocks. People might even bring Spikes, Toxic Spikes, that kind of thing, so when you do Mega Evolve, the next time you switch in, you're taking a lot of damage. If you're relying on Flareblitz, you take a lot of recoil, stuff like that. Whereas Arcanine is slightly less weak to those hazards, and I felt like that made it less of an issue. I still think people are going to bring rocks, but it's not as detrimental. Like, Arcanine can still switch in, heal up on certain things. ZEDION, you know, if it takes 50%, that's a massive chunk. So I ended up taking it for that reason. And then other fire types I was not particularly interested in. Also, I love Arcanine. Like, it's probably my favorite mon ever. It's a giant fire dog. Like, it's been great. And decided I really just wanted to use it, so I was like, fuck it, I'm getting it. I'm just YOLO. And part of the other reason is electric weaknesses are actually quite easy to cover, so if I just cover the fire weakness, get a good fire type, I can cover everything else pretty easily. You know, its Synodite is okay with Celesteela. Celesteela will take the ground hits at least, not like 1,000 arrows, but, you know, 1,000 arrows is a scary move that people just have to learn to deal with. So going into the third round, I was looking at something that could cover Celesteela's electric weakness in particular, and again, ground types. You want to get a good ground type in my opinion, but there are a lot more good ground types around, like Lando T, Lando I, we allowed with Sandforce, which still makes it pretty solid. Hippowdon as a bulky ground type can be good, but what I opted to go for was something that also gave me another really good typing which I was looking for, and that was Crocodile, because I wanted a dark type. Dark types are amazing in the format and are pretty much essential in the current meta, because as much as draft format is a week by week basis thing, there is somewhat of a meta. Although we banned Tapu Lele, there's still stuff like Necrozma going around, Jirachi's super popular, things like that. Basically, a lot of powerful psychic types. A good dark type really helps with that, because Stab Pursuit is really nice. It's reasonably powerful, like 117 base attack, so I can, you know, run Scarf Moxie with Earthquake and clean teams up and stuff like that. The other advantage that Crocodile gets this generation is access to a lot of interesting Z moves. Z moves, Z moves, I'm going to swap between the two, just deal with it. So first of all, like offensive move pool, it already got Sludge Bomb. Now, for something like Tangrowth, if you run Acid Downpour, you can just take it out. And then like Beat Up isn't really an interesting Z move, but it's a cool move to have anyway. Obviously Knockoff is still broken as hell, gets rock coverage, all that kind of thing, but in particular with its status Z moves, it gets Me First, which is a really interesting one, because that gives it +2 speed and then uses the attack against the mon that it's facing. So like, you bring in like a Moxie Crocodile on a mon that's weakened, that you can revenge kill easily. You click Z Me First, take out something, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you have a +2/+1 Crocodile, and that's absolutely terrifying. So, as you can probably tell from that rant, I did make Crocodile my all Z-move user. I don't think I'm going to be trading it to anyone. Like, it's a very good mon, and in my opinion was a little bit underpriced. It also gets access to stuff like Stealth Rocks, which is really handy, so definitely was happy with getting Crocodile there in the third round. So at this point, again, always look at typings, always look at what your weaknesses are, and always look at what are my backups for particular mons. So I wanted to get a good grass type at some point, but like a milling tier grass type, so not like one of the best ones, for example, like a Mega Venusaur or a Kartana or something like that. I didn't really have the budget to afford a really high tier grass type. I wanted something middle-ish, lower tier, that had a bit of bulk behind it, a little bit of power, and potentially some useful utility as well. And two of the ones I was looking at to fill that role were Decidueye and Serena. Now, I wasn't going to get this mon in this round until someone else took Decidueye. I think it was Jolt took Decidueye in round 4. And I was like, okay, that's my backup gone. I looked at a lot of other teams, and a lot of people didn't have a grass type yet. And I was like, I should get one that I want now, because chances are if I leave it, it'll get taken. So I ended up changing the order of what I was going to pick and grabbing Serena. So why do I pick Serena? Well, It's got reasonable bulk, like not quite pixie, you know, a little bit lower in HP, but then 98 defenses is pretty solid. Access to recovery, which is nice. It's slowish, but it's actually got a reasonably good, like very good attack stat, so you can run like banded drop kick, and that can be really effective. The other good thing it gives me is a rapid spinner. So this is the first bit of hazard removal that I actually drafted, which at this point was starting to look a bit thin on the ground as well. I needed to get some good hazard removal in early. And Serena, you know, it gets U-turn, it gets drop kick, high jump kick, it gets actually pretty decent offensive moves. So like if I want to run a scarf or a banded set, I can potentially break through teams that way. And it's still reasonably bulky, so I can run like assault vest with rapid spin, or I can run leftovers physically defensive with synthesis, stuff like that. I was really interested in using Serena actually, and I'm pretty glad that I got it. It was also only 9 mil, which is really nice because it leaves me a lot of budget to play around with for some of my later picks. You know, I picked some fairly high tier ones so far, and picking up Serena that cheap really opens up my options for later rounds. Now we get to the fun part of the draft. So like, I've had some notoriously amazing round 5 picks. I'm pretty sure I picked up Thunderous Incarnate in round 5, which was just like, how did that get that far? This year I'm pretty sure it went like round 1 or 2, because that's where it deserves to go. It's an amazing mod. And I mentioned at the start that I was looking at picking up a Lati Twin. Now, after I picked up Serena, I was really looking at getting Meloetta, because I love the mon, and I really think it can do work in the format. But it's just so hard to fit on a draft when you have all these other things you need to get. And I didn't want to stack up on another Psychic type, so I was like, oh, maybe not a Lati Twin. But I was looking at the other dragons available, and I was like, the Lati Twin actually just really helps my team. So I decided to scrap getting Meloetta, went, fuck it, I'll get a Lati instead. And was like, alright, has one of them been taken yet? Nope. Both were still available going into round 5. And I was like, I'm going to get one. I don't care what happens, I'm going to get one. And the pick before me, Jack got Latios, which is lucky because I was already looking at Latias. I've used Latios before, haven't used Latias, and it does give me something which I was really lacking on my draft and with the rest of the ones I had planned at this moment, which was special bulk. So like Cell Stealer has special bulk, but it gets worn down easily. Arcanine has somewhat special bulk, but is better on the physical side. Crocodile is better on the physical side with Intimidate, etc. Latias, base 130 special defense, hell yeah. Access to like Calm Mind, Recover, great move pool. Honestly just an amazing mon, and gives me a defogger. So now I have a defogger and a spinner. Very solid type synergy amongst those first 5 picks in my opinion as well. Gives me a Psychic type to back up. You know, there's a Psychic Dark Fighting Core thing, which is a decent defensive core with like Crocodile. So if I get up a fighting type now, that's kind of built as well. And access to Levitate means that unless I face 1000 arrows or more Breaker Earthquake, I have another ground immunity, which is really nice. That's one of the other thing I was going to say about Serena, by the way. Having a grass type is super important unless you want to lose to Zygarde whenever you face it. And because there's now 2 available, that's basically 2 teams you will lose to, because like you need 1000 arrows switch in, and literally grass and bug types are the only things that do it. And I believe it gets Stone Age, so bug types are less good. And also there's not as many good bug types in my opinion. So good grass types really important. Getting Latias really helps as well. It also adds something which I was severely lacking at this point, which is speed. My fastest mon was Arcanine at base 95, so getting a mon at 110 really helps to stretch out my speed tiers. At the moment they're fairly diverse. Arcanine and Crocodile are pretty similar, but then Celesteela, Serena. If I get something in the 80s, that covers that sort of chunk. Get something in the 100s, and that covers up to Latias, and I don't really need something much faster than that. You know, there will be teams where entire mon have to be my entire team, but that's sort of unavoidable, and I think I have the bulk to deal with it. So then, you know, I have my dragon, I have my steel type, and I was looking at a fairy. By the way, Latias is also one of my offensive Z move users, because Draco Meteor, what the hell? Draco Meteor, or a lot of its coverage which isn't quite as strong, so things like Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, etc. can be really helpful, particularly if I run like a Carmine Sweeper and there's one mon that is standing in my way, say like a Jirachi, and I bring a bulky Carmine Latias and they bring in their Jirachi, and I'm like, I can't kill this, you know, I've only got Psyshock, I can run Z Shadow Ball and just annihilate that thing. And also I didn't think I was going to end up training it, so it looked like a good option to make a Z move user. Now next up, as I said, looking at a fairy type, also a water type would be nice. A Zoom Roll was way too expensive. And I was looking at other fairies around, there was stuff like Gardevoir, but like when I have a Latias, that leaves me really open to a couple of typing in particular. And then I can't even remember what else was around. You know, Clefable had been taken, pretty sure Sylveon had been taken. There really weren't that many fairies that I wanted. One thing that, oh my god, second round, one thing that I was like, I really wish I could have this mon was Mega Altaria, but it's not released yet, because Mega Altaria plus Celesteela is just like, ugh. But, in any case, I think most of you guys would have figured out what I'm going by now. I actually opted to go for Primarina. Now, the reason I went for that is because offensive fairy is often very underrated, and base 126 special attack plus Moonblast is super solid. Now, there are some issues with Primarina. The fact that I'm basically relying on it to be a bulky water / bulky fairy, and it doesn't have great physical defense, leaves me a bit open to certain things. But at this point, I have 2 intimidating mons, as in like Arcanine and Crocodile lower other things attack, and I have Serena which learns Trop Kick, so say like I'm in with Serena, they switch in their Bandit Entei as we go for Trop Kick, lower its attack by 1, then I switch out into my Primarina, I can deal with having a less physically bulky water type because I'm lowering things attack. Or if I switch in Arcanine on the Entei and then pivot Projecting Stone Edge into Primarina or whatever, like I just can lower things attacks. And so I didn't think it was that much of an issue that would be that much weaker. It may come back to bite me in later in some games this season, but no team is perfect, so leaving myself a little bit open to like a really powerful physical fire type like a Victini for example, I can find other ways around it. I always have, that's sort of how draft format's supposed to work. You can never draft a perfect team, every team has flaws. But what I do like about Primarina is its wall breaking ability with its dual stab, which is very hard to switch into with that base 126 special attack. Reasonable bulk, if I run like a bulky Assault Vest set with coverage moves, that can be really nice. Unfortunately, Liquid Voice is both unreleased and mostly useless, but getting into torrent range, like if I run like a Sash variant and get into torrent, that's always great. And, you know, the ultimate move for a water type, it can just run Scald and get burns on things because that's what water types do, yay. So, at this point I have most of my cores rounded out. I've got really solid 6 mons in my opinion, and I have 26 left to spend. So there are a lot of ways people can do this. You could get like 4 mons at 5 mil and 1 at 6 mil, you know, really spread yourself out, get a lot of different typing, a lot of different utilities, that kind of thing. My personal way of doing this is there are certain holes that I want to be patched in my team. There are things that I didn't quite have enough of yet, or that I want some more power, some more speed, that kind of thing, and the best way to do that was to get a really good higher tier mon. Now, most of you will notice that Crocodile is currently my only Stealth Rocker, so I wanted another Stealth Rocker, I wanted something fast, I wanted a fighting type potentially to synergize with the Latios and the Crocodile, and I ended up going with Terrakion. Now, I was looking at 2 different ones, Terrakion and Lucario. The reason I ended up going to Terrakion was primarily base 108 speed and secondarily Stealth Rocks. So because I had a lot of things around base 90, Lucario didn't fit that as well. I also have another extreme speed user in Arcanine, so it's not that important that I get the priority. Whereas getting something I can just run like banded close combat and outspeed most mons on the other person's team is great. And the other advantage of Terrakion is I made it my 3rd Z-move user, which means I can run Continental Crush and things, not have to risk Stone Edge misses, or if I have like a Clefable, unaware Clefable, and I go for like close combat, I can then run Acid Downpour and take it out the following turn with Poison Jab or whatever, stuff like that. Really good mon. And the justified ability means that, you know, with Latios, if they do want to go for knockoff, they risk giving my Terrakion a +1, which is always a terrifying prospect. Really solid typing. Respectable bulk, like it's one of the things with all these pseudo legendaries, is they do just have solid all-around bulk, which means it can actually switch into resisted hits and stuff like that. Obviously not like super powerful, like a Specs Psychic or whatever, it's still going to do shit tons, but like it can take hits. I can run like Assault Vest, all sorts of stuff. And another thing with Terrakion is it gives me another setup sweeper, which is really nice because at this point like Arcanine can't really set up. Crocodile can with Z-moves, but Serena can't, Primarina can't, so having Crocodile, Celesteela, Latios, and Terrakion, which can all set up and sweep certain teams, is going to be really helpful in the season. It also gives me a really powerful physical wall breaker, which I was missing a bit. That was the advantage of Primarina, that gave me a special wall breaker. Now I pick up some really strong physical attack as well, to go with just solid physical attack stats all around on my team. So I'm pretty happy with Terrakion. It fills in a little bit of a gap in speed tiers, so the biggest jump at this point is 108 to 95 with Terrakion and Arcanine, and that is exactly 15 points, which is just the amount you need to force people to run plus speed natures. So it means they will be running a little bit of bulk against me if they outspeed, like something like base 100 that wants to outspeed Arcanine can run a little bit more bulk than if I had another base 100, for example. But that little drop in speed from Latios is going to actually help out in counter-teaming other people. Sorry, it was 13 points, it's not exactly 15, but it's just under 15, which is good. I know what I meant, you should work it out. So now, we only have 11 left, and we can get 1 mon, or 2, or 3, or 4. So we currently have 7, we have to get at least 1 more, and we can get a maximum of 4 more. Now, 4 more for 11 mil really isn't advisable in my opinion. Way too many low tier picks that you just won't out of bring to a lot of games. So I decided to go and split up a little bit and get some things that I felt like I was really lacking. So first one of those was another electric immunity. So I currently only have Crocodile, which means if people want to hit Crocodile, they can just run like HPI, stuff like that, and they'll hit Crocodile. It'll also hit both my resists in Serena and Latios. So I really wanted something that could deal with Bolt Beam and preferably an electric immunity. And I ended up picking one of the weirdest and somehow still the best mons in Gen 7 in Toga Maru. So this is one of those mons where you look at the stats and you're like, not very good in anything really, and not really like an all-around bulky mon either. Look at its move pool and you're like, yeah, there are some interesting things. It gets Spiky Shield because reasons. It gets Wish, which is really nice, U-turn. Get Zing Zap, which is kind of nice for a physical stab. But, it doesn't get Iron Head, it gets Durable, which is bad for such a fast mon. Base 96 is too fast to really run it effectively. And it looks just so underwhelming. And then people use it and they're like, why is this thing just doing so much work? It's such a enigmatic mon because it deals with things that it shouldn't deal with. So like, all of a sudden, I have a good switch into Tapu Koko, because previously I did not. Now, sure, Tapu Koko can run HP Ground, but now I force it to run HP Ground, whereas previously with my team, all it needed was Thunderbolt and Dazzling Gleam. And maybe Brave Bird for Serena if they were really worried about that, but now I can stop it from being like a super scary set because I have to bring something for my Toga Maru as well, and if I run an Air Balloon and switch in on an AP Ground, etc., I can deal with them that way. It also, with Lightning Rod ability, gives me another electric immunity, which is nice. Additionally, abilities like Sturdy is going to be really, really handy in potential situations, like if I want to run, I don't know, Sturdy, Custap Berry, who knows what I end up coming up with. Toga Maru, that could be really, really fun. And it just it's typing fit, a secondary steel type, which is kind of nice, means I'm not forced to rely on Cellar Stealer. And its typing just covered a lot of my weaknesses, gave me a really, really solid flying resist, and Wish is just handy to have, so I can run Wish Protect and get this thing healed up. Now for the last mon, there were a couple of things that were still missing from my team. Grounded Poison type would be really handy to just be able to get rid of Toxic Spikes and dissuade people from trying to bring them, and being able to bring my own Toxic Spikes is super duper handy, so I was basically looking at the Poison type at this point. And I was looking at other weaknesses I currently had. I was a little bit weak to Fire, a little bit weak to Fighting, which the Poison type helped cover. With Fire, I needed something else to cover, so I was looking at what can I get, what gets Toxic Spikes, that kind of thing. And found a mon that's been buffed this generation, which I fell in love with in a previous season, and that is Qwilfish. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Qwilfish is back playing for me this season. After putting a massive shift in my championship season, and I mean, if you want to see why I love Qwilfish, go back to my draft analysis from Season 3. Get Spikes, Toxic Spikes, Destiny Bond, Taunt, Aqua Jet for priority. What else does it even need? It's just a utility mon. It's not going to sweep teams, it's not going to be a wall breaker, like ever. It's not powerful enough to have move coverage, but it gets so many interesting utility moves, and it sits at base 85 speed tier, which basically means I have really, really solid from 60 up to 110. Nice spread out speed tiers, which is really nice. I don't have something really slow, but like things like Reuniclus or whatever aren't going to run speed most of the time anyway. And Qwilfish fills in a lot of my holes. The little buff it got was plus 10 in defense, which is nice. Gives me a third Intimidator, and gives me another option for a bulky water. So if I'm really, really worried about a physical fire type or something like that, I can run Qwilfish. If I'm really, really worried about a special fire type, I can bring Primarina, stuff like that, and then other things to deal with other coverage, so like Latios for example. So if they run ground coverage or psychic coverage for my Quillfish, Latios can still deal with it. Stuff like that. So all in all, I felt like Quillfish actually fit the team surprisingly well, as it always does. So that actually rounds up my draft, because we did move Quillfish up to 6 mil this season, and you can see the full draft here on screen. I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. Certain ones I'm really keen to try out. So Crocodile and Arcanine I've had on my radar for so long. I wanted to try them out in like a full proper league rather than just like mock battles where I've done well with them and stuff like that. Terrakion is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated ones in the format. Like, the fact that I managed to get it, round 7 is just insane. And then a nice couple of utility picks there, like Serena, Toga, Maru, Quillfish. I'm pretty happy with my draft. It's not perfect, but no draft is. And I think I can do really well with it. So here's looking forward to the season. Videos will start going up sometime. There's the dates and announcements on the PPL channel. You check out all that in the description. All the links to all the other coaches we will be facing are also in the description, as well as the coaches for Division 2, and I encourage you to go check them all out. Some of my best friends. So in that case, I think that's covered everything. For the graphics, I made them myself except for the logo, which is made by Andre. You go check him out. There are also t-shirts for sale in the description, which you should totally go buy. I haven't received mine yet because Australia, but if you're interested in getting PPL t-shirts, there are some for every single team, as well as the general PPL and some old teams on there. And all the money from the sales from my shirt are going back into the PPL to make graphics, to buy intros and stuff like that. So I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you in my next upload.